Okay, so that is the income capitalization approach for 90% of properties that are income producing properties. Basically, any income producing property where you can come up with a net operating income, that's the way you're going to value it. There are some few income producing properties where you can't come up with a net operating income, and the main reason would be maybe you're buying a property and you're going to convert it to income producing status. It hasn't been an income producing property previously, because anything that's been an income producing property, would you agree that you can get a net operating income for that property?
Yes.
You're just going to look at its history, right? You're going to go ask, if I'm looking at buying this building, I'm going to ask the owner of this building to show me your books. I want to see how much rent you collected. I want to see what your maintenance expenses were and what your management fees were, so I can come up with that net operating income. What kind of property can you think of that maybe as an investor, I'm buying it, it's not an income producing property right now, but my purpose in buying it is to turn it into an income producing property?
Beach house.
How about take the word beach off and just go with house? Lots of times investors come to us as real estate brokers and they want to purchase residential properties and convert them into rentals, because they don't care about the house as a house. They don't care if it's got granite countertops. They don't care if it's got stainless steel appliances. They care about how much, what it produces. Income. So we want to value it using this income approach, but we kind of get stopped short because we start to look at the thing and we ask the owner, can you give us your net operating income? Meanwhile, this is Aunt Margaret who's lived in the house for the last 30 years. Does she know what we're talking about? No. Nor does she care. Because she can't give a net operating income because there's no such thing as an operating income, because nobody's been paying rent there. Nobody's been tracking expenses. So we don't have the requisite numbers to apply the natural income capitalization approach. But we can still value the property using its income as a basis for its value. Okay? And we do that with something called a gross rent multiplier. The fact that it has the word gross in it should tell you that you don't want to use it unless you absolutely have to. Because gross means before expenses are even taken into account. And that's always going to be a much less accurate number than something like the income capitalization formula, which uses net operating income as a basis. So you've got in your formula packet, and it's also in your book on page 407, we talk about the gross rent multiplier. And the formula for a gross rent multiplier has a T-bar. Looks like this. You've got the gross rent multiplier on the bottom, and then you've got the monthly rent. It's monthly, not annual. And up at the top, you've got the value of the property. So a gross rent multiplier, I'm going to talk about it in several different ways to try to help it sink into you what it really is. A gross rent multiplier is nothing in the world but how many months it takes the investor to get their money back. If I say the property has a gross rent multiplier of 120, that means it's going to take that investor 120 months to get all their money back at the current rental amount. Now, if they raise the rent, what happens to the gross rent multiplier? It goes down, because higher rent means I'm getting my money back more quickly, which means it's going to take fewer months to get it back. So a gross rent multiplier of 120 means it's going to take us 10 years to get our investment back. Does that make sense for you guys? It's a quick way to shop. We don't really use it so much to come up with values for property as we do to simply say, investors, sort of like they will come to you and say, I need a cap rate of at least 10%. Investors who buy these kinds of properties, they will just throw a gross rent multiplier at you. And they'll say, look, I'll buy anything where you can get me a gross rent multiplier of 100 or less. Well, how many years is 100 months? It's a little more than 8 years, right? Because 8 years would be 96 months. So what they're essentially saying is, I want to get my money back in 8.5 years when they throw 100 months at you. Does that make sense for you guys? That's what that gross rent multiplier means. And what it does for you as the real estate broker is it gives you a target to hit. So we'll just throw that target up here. We'll say, my investor tells me they want a gross rent multiplier of 100 or better. Now, this is different from the capitalization rate. With the capitalization rate, that number getting better meant it went in what direction? Higher with the capitalization rate, right? Capitalization rate, because it's a percentage of our return, we want it to go higher if I'm the investor. A gross rent multiplier is how long it takes me to get my money back. Do I want my money back faster or slower?
Faster.
Faster, which means I want that number of months to be what?
Shorter.
Shorter, lower. So a lower gross rent multiplier is better, while a higher capitalization rate is better for the investor. So if my investor tells me I'll buy anything with a gross rent multiplier of 100 or better, now we go out shopping for properties. And I find him a great property and I say, look, this would be a great rental. It's a 3-bedroom. What's the first question he's going to ask me?
How much does it rent for?
What does it rent for? Right? What does it rent for? And how am I going to figure out what it rents for?
Are you judging what local rents are?
I'm going to look at other 3-bedrooms that rent in the same vicinity, right? I'm going to compare it. I'm going to find comps. And instead of looking for comps that have sold, I'm going to look for rented comps. And let's say I find that other 3-bedrooms in the area rent for $1,300 a month. Well, monthly rent. And if this investor says, I'll buy anything with a gross rent multiplier of 100 or better, can't I just do the math right there to tell what that investor would be willing to pay for that property? What are they willing to pay for that property?
$130,000.
$130,000. So if that property's priced at $130,000 or better, will they buy it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does everybody see how that works? Very simple, shortcut way to quickly throw a value on residential properties that are going to be bought for income producing purposes. Because the nice thing about this is, once the investor realizes what they want their return to be, you can figure out, okay, their gross rent multiplier is 110, it's 115, it's 120, whatever that number is for that investor. And once you know that number, you can quickly apply it to, all you need to know is the rent for that property. What can we rent this for? Multiply times that gross rent multiplier, that's what we're willing to pay for it. And you keep going until you find a property that matches that price point. That's how you would shop for it as an investor. Make sense?
Yeah, just a minute ago you said that would be a good property if the value was $130,000 or more. Would that be
$130,000 or less. Yes, I'm sorry if I said that. Yes, $130,000 or less. I might have said that. I do that from time to time. So a good value would be $130,000 or less, because if my gross rent multiplier goes down, like say, for example, if I found that property for $127,000, calculate my gross rent multiplier. What should I expect it to do? Should I expect a higher number or a lower number? Should be lower. It should be fewer months to get my money back. So what's $127,000 divided by that same monthly rent of $1,300?
97.692.
97.692, and they told me they wanted a gross rent multiplier of 100 or better, right? Well, better is lower. That means instead of it taking 100 months to get their money back, it's only going to take them 97 and a half months to get their, so they owe me 2 months worth of rent. Now, and again, I've asked this earlier, what's another quick way they could adjust the gross rent multiplier without changing anything else? Say they had already paid $127,000 for the property.
Raise the rent.
They could raise the rent. If they raise the rent, that would further lower this number, would it not? If they lower the rent, this number edges back up.